Welcome back. Questions continue to be raised following the Prime Minister's absence from the Emancipation Support Committee's African Emancipation Day celebrations, along with the political reaction that followed. Joining us this morning is sociologist, executive leadership advisor and international relations expert Dr. Mwale Henry to examine those developments and what they reveal about the broader political and social climate in Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning to you, Dr. Mwale Henry, and welcome.
Good morning, Lance, and good morning to all of your viewers. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, I promise you we're going to talk about some of those things I just mentioned, but, you know, your story captured my attention this morning, and that is a story that is on your screen as we speak. It is featured in the Express Business newspaper, and it's a story written by you yourself, Dr. Mwale Emmanuel Henry. And the first paragraph actually captured my attention, and it reads like this. Last week, I graduated with a Doctor of Philosophy in Sociology from the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus. Yet, the first scholar in my life never finished primary school. And so this story begs the question, whom are you speaking about, and what is this story? It chronicles your journey from humble beginnings to where you are today. So first of all, congratulations to you on achieving your PhD, and tell us, who are you talking about here in this story?
Thank you, Lance, for bringing this to my attention. I'm talking about my mother, Judith Bernice Keynes Henry. She passed in 2024. And, a regular woman. She was a domestic worker at Texaco, then Petrotrin. And she taught me the importance of listening more, understanding the questions behind the questions. And most of my intellectual curiosity was born, around the kitchen table from this mighty woman. And, this accomplishment allowed me to really reflect on where that early scholarship began. So yes, the degree bears my name, but the scholarship clearly bears hers.
Oh wow, what a very warm tribute to your mother, and condolences, on her passing. I did note that you would have referred to her as her name was Judith Keynes, and you've just clarified that in fact that she would have passed. Now, she would have been the motivation for you to go on into higher education to further studies. And so you've graduated you are now a Doctor of Philosophy in Sociology, which is really understanding society and so on. You said in the story that you are interested in not only on what people think, but why they think the way they think. And so that also interests me. And so I want to ask you, we're diving straight into it, in terms of the political and the climate that we seem to be enduring at this time, with all of tensions as it relates to race and so on. Let me ask you, from where you are, you have spent a lot of time researching, studying the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You've talked about spending time in, I don't want to, is it bars? Did you say bars?
Yeah.
Yes?
That's correct.
And in other common places to get to better understand the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That's what sociology is about. Are we a racist people?
Great question. Our historical underpinnings and understanding what a plural society is, former colonial masters would have used race as a form of control, and that macro understanding of society permeates in our day-to-day experiences. But to your key question, are we racist inherently? And the key answer is no. However, politicians use some of these historical references to create divisions to their advantage. I'll take you a moment. If you reflect on heroine, as we just talked about my mother, I want to mention Elmer Francis. She was a woman who understood what resistance is and understanding the underpinning of society. And she said something very key. She said, my speeches create a fire in the minds of people so as to change the conditions which now exist. So when we understand the language and the practice that of resistance, where we saw at the African Emancipation Day, that resistance by Olobasi was expressing that type of resistance, not with racist intent, but to examine the current conditions in which people live.
You're saying that that this talk of race really lies with the politicians, and they're using it as a tool to divide the people and to influence and motivate the people to create this division. Is it working?
In some quarters it is, because people have to literally twist themselves into intellectual pretzel to make it valid. I'll give you a key example. You know, I always ask myself the question, since when protest or resistance is equivalent to racism? If you would recall, Patrick Manning, in his campaign in 2020, was campaigning in Sawa, and he met a man called Percy. And he lifted up his hands and rejected him from even entering into his home or by his gate. And the UNC turned that into what we know, the Do So campaign. At no time did I hear anyone say that protest was racist in nature. If we recall when the Red House or the Parliament was at the waterfront, every time during budget time, there would be maxis and buses of people coming in, protesting, jeering at politicians that they enter. I never heard persons define the mere fact of protesting as racist. And therefore, when we consider this protest of Olobasi, which we must examine the content of her statement. And what was the content? She made it very clear that you promise us food tomorrow when we are hungry today. We will remember that promise. So it was about economic conditions. It was about what the right of dignity and the right of sustenance. I see nothing racist in such a statement and in such an introduction.
You have referenced two occasions, but those were in the past, local examples. But we are living in a different time now. Let me ask you, you're saying that the division is not yet there. But how easy or difficult or challenging it is for those divisions not to crack or to appear when we live among our own, quote unquote, for now, bear with me, our own kind. I imagine, and so I'm asking you, how difficult or challenging it is for people to distance themselves from that kind of rhetoric.
Well, if you examine, for instance, our voters who engage in exercising their franchise over the years, if you examine the EBC records, there has been a declining participation in the voting experience. If this trend continues, then you might definitely have a minority of the society electing a prime minister or populating the parliament. So it is an indication in some shape or form that the society itself is tired of that rhetoric in itself. And oftentimes politicians are simply appealing to the base or the core base of their party and not the wider society. So the tiredness is there in terms of political participation. The tiredness is there, when you speak to the common man, where they understand and they see the rhetoric, and I would not even attempt to use false equivalency to say this side did it and the other side did it. But what I would do to your question, let's talk about right now. The current prime minister made a choice, and this is someone who is no political novice. Many people have written her off politically. They have read many obituaries of her, and she has surpassed those circumstances. She is brilliant in her strategy. And she even talks about her experience studying in Mona, working and studying in Barbados. And the prime minister is particularly aware of the use of those derogatory terms of describing herself as an East Indian Trinbagonian. So that's a choice. That's not ignorance. That's a choice. And those types of choices have consequences. So from a sociological perspective, it requires some sobriety, walking back from such a choice. and allow the society to focus on what is required from Olubasi's voice. There is a concern of the economic, social conditions today, and that needs to be addressed right now.
Right. So, Dr. Marley Henry, let me ask you pointedly now that we've gotten all of the niceties out of the way and so on, so to speak, let me ask you, because again, you're a sociologist and you have studied the common man in Trinidad and Tobago, you understand the psyche and so on, and you live here and you see what is being played out in society. Is any particular race that is being targeted unfairly in Trinidad and Tobago by any political party or any particular group for that matter?
Well, great question. So the debate cuts on both sides. One, the UNC has made it very clear that the People's National Movement would have enjoyed some level of support amongst the African society. And their claim is that there has been neglect of the urban cities, neglect in terms of opportunities whilst they govern. And they have positioned themselves to right that wrong. But when you look at budgeting decisions, because I remember analyzing the first budget of the United National Congress in their first term, and I said publicly that budgets speaks to your priorities. Budget speaks to your strategy. And if you examine the budget allocations, be it local government, be it employment opportunities, all of these areas of financing or cuts have affected many poor persons, number one, persons within those urban centers, number two, and persons who would have been caught through the policy decisions of the United National Congress. There has been some changes or attempts to bring forth a different form of CPEP, a different form of URP. The Prime Minister has indicated this is a new form of, gang busting, dealing with ghost gangs, etc. But the replacement, does not compare with those who require to be lifted up. So from that perspective, there has been an unequal distribution of those who are affected from the local government perspective. And it's in the numbers, this is not a suggestion. And the Minister of Local Government has not been able to explain why these types of cuts in one area of the society and increases in other areas of the society. A government is called to serve all persons within the society. And if the claim before that there was neglect or to the government's term, geographical discrimination, how can you now enter governance and repeat the same alleged issue that you once rejected?
All right. You held both the Prime Minister and the opposition leader to account for treating the emancipation as presents, I'm quoting, prance and platitudes. How are both sides of the political divide feeling marginalized communities?
Well, to your point, when I observed the procession, I saw, the opposition leader along with some of our colleagues. They were in the streets and, singing different Afro-spiritual songs. And one of the songs they were singing, it's known as Move Satan, Move, Let Me Pass. But the opposition leader was leading a team by saying, Move Kamla, Move, Let Me Pass. And the purpose of, such a celebration and a recognition of African strength, its resilience, its contribution, for me, it opens the door, the political door, for the Prime Minister to say, this is really a political procession and I'm not going to participate in it. Secondly, I would be quite frank, Lance, the mere fact that Olubasi, one person, was able to shake the consciousness of an entire society tells me that the opposition leader has left a wide door open for the powerless to actually speak to the powerful. So we need to ask the question from a constitutional perspective, is the opposition leader effective enough as a team to address some of these ills? And more importantly, not simply grandstanding, but from a substantive way, how does the opposition move the society to have a broader conversation and not engage in this tit-for-tat response? Because, Lance, truly we have true economic challenges, employment issues, diversification issues, energy numbers are no longer, energy production numbers haven't been published for the last couple of months. So there are a lot of governance issues that the opposition leader needs to be strategically focused on and not validate the distraction of racial tensions that come from Whitehall.
You position yourself as a political analyst, and that you said, I'm looking in the paper actually, I think you've said where you would have predicted the victory of Donald Trump. Am I correct? Yes?
Yes.
I applied this approach while analyzing the 2024 United States presidential election by interpreting polling alongside public and informal discourse. I predicted Donald Trump's electoral victory, his popular vote, etc., etc., etc. Where are you seeing, from a political perspective, where are you seeing our country is balancing towards right now?
Well, currently, as we know, the environment is looking towards 2027 for local government election. The present administration has a handsome majority in how they shape the battleground for that local government election. It will not be strange whatever prediction or recommendation that comes up from the local government committee that has been established will shape or inform EBC of how they allocate vis-a-vis boundaries or additional local government seats. And that's uniquely going to be falling where the support lies. And you're going to see that conversation in 2027. In addition, if you understand how society navigates what we call official conversation and how they accept or navigate power, I make no bones about it. Dr. Rowley would have been ahead of his class by his attempt of positioning Stuart Young, because I'm telling you, the society is, if we are to create what we call a much more developed society and to have that type of modern conversation, maybe the political parties are presently exploring how do we challenge those political and racial schemas and allow its leadership to be led by someone who's not a representation of the wider base. You know what we talk about, right? The Afro Party, the Indo Party. And that experiment in itself would have been on show. And what will solve those racial tensions? We have to move away from sexism, genderism, female leader, black leader, Indian leader, to normal, competent leader. And who is that more competent leader that would lead society? So I would not be also surprised that there may be the workings of a different type of leader for the United National Congress. And I know the People's National Movement will have to address when that political battle space changes.
Dr. Henry, we have just about a minute again, and in wrapping up, you've talked about those inherent biases. You talk about sexism and racism and ageism, perhaps, maybe as well. So we have quite a lot to deal with as a people, in terms of prejudice and biases. But as we move forward, very quickly, how do you suggest, I know we might need a whole program for that, but in a few seconds, how do we address and solve those inherent biases?
It starts with the leadership. Leaders will set the tone, will set the agenda. They will set what the society or the container for the content of our society. So I want to remind all leaders on both sides of the aisle, the higher you climb, the heavier your duty to remember the people, the histories that carried you there. The Prime Minister understands intimately her coming from the southern region of this island, traveling through the region and understanding the nuances of culture. So I would hold her to that high esteem to lead that cultural conversation. And likewise, the People's National Movement is no stranger to power and governance, and they have a duty to provide a credible alternative to governance and a credible alternative to the political discourse. Once that happens, and we clean up what happens in the Red House, in the main street and in our houses, we can now reflect on proper political content.
All right, Dr. Mwale Emmanuel Henry, sociologist and international relations expert. Congratulations once again on your PhD. and best wishes to you. To the viewers, you can find his story in the Express Business on page 10. There's a full story there where he pays tribute to his mother and attributed his success to her. So congratulations to you once again. And thank you for sharing time with us here on the Morning Edition.
Thank you so much, Lance, and good morning to your viewers again.
All right. Well, let's head to a break now with this image. Sunset off the Gulf of Paria at San Fernando in San Fernando from Erica George. Well, it's daytime now. That sunset means wake up if you have not yet woken up. It's 7:26 in Trinidad and Tobago. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Love to hear